We're going to start today with, again, kind of reiterating more deeply what our thought is of the greater good and a little bit more insight on how you can become part of this and share ideas. And we do like you to join, and we do like you to comment and put any suggestions out there that you feel can help with the mission.
Yeah, so this is the first episode. This is where we have to start. And I think that everybody needs to kind of shave away whatever is bothering them or whatever outside distractions they have or whatever doubts they have about themselves. People, you need to really dig deep and kind of dive into the soul of it. That begins with what you think should be the ideal world, right? So that's what we're going to do here today. We're going to shave back everything and figure out, for you and I personally, what's our greater good. And maybe we can give other people actionable steps towards finding out their own greater good so that they can join us on this journey.
All right, real quick, to give you just kind of what we're here, what we're all about. It's just other than just two guys, a screen, two faces. First of all, I'm Tony. I'm Twin A.
I'm Joe.
That's my twin brother Joe. Twin B. And we haven't been, he lives in Thailand. I'm here in the States in New Jersey. And we've been having some interesting phone conversations recently. And we're like, well, I think probably more people are thinking like this. Like, how can we expand this and kind of create a platform to share these conversations, share these ideas that we're talking about, because they really, like, the conversations with someone will go like 2 hours. We're like, man, this is like really interesting stuff here. So we decided we want to launch a channel which we called The Greater Good, because a lot of it was focused on shifting the ideas that are like currently in society into a greater good phase, or what we were kind of like labeling as the greater good. And our mission is to help cultivate more of the greater good. So it's like basically the purpose of this channel is to create ideas, thoughts, and share suggestions and advice to inspire others to think about what really matters in their life and to join in their part in becoming the greater good and doing greater good for all of society and the world at large. What our definition, or at least kind of my perspective, and I'm sure Joe shares in this, is that the greater good is a collective who is ideally innately good in their hearts and wants to expand on that, is looking to advance themselves and those around them in a positive direction, whether it's on a small scale or whether it's on a larger scale. They're looking to make a difference, be better, be a game changer, and not only for now, but also for future generations to come. They want to leave the world a better place than it currently is, than that they were born into it, for next people that are going to be arriving, because the world's changing faster than ever now. So it's something that we got to jump on, move quickly. So we're going to start today with, again, kind of reiterating more deeply what our thought is of the greater good and a little bit more insight on how you can become part of this and share ideas. And we do like you to join, and we do like you to comment and put any suggestions out there that you feel can help with the mission. So Joe, do you want to start? Just kind of like give your perspective on, some of the ideas we're discussing on the phone calls and what your overall outlook is on the greater good, and kind of what your thoughts are.
Sure, man. Yeah, no, I think you did a good job.
I'm here, like I said, I mentioned I'm here in New Jersey, and it just started snowing out, so that's why I was, that's why I was a little distracted on that. But yeah,
Wow.
go.
I'm jealous now. I live in
Yeah,
Thailand, and it's not snowing outside. uh,
go far.
so I'm a bit jealous of that. But yeah, man, I think you did a good job of kind of summarizing and captivating what we're trying to accomplish here, and you hit on a couple of really good points that I think that need to be iterated, especially of like looking towards the next generation and the fact that the world's changing really quick. And this is a lot of kind of stuff that I wrote down when we were talking about my thoughts about the greater good. I believe that the greater good does not necessarily have to be something that is kind of recognized collectively as a society. I think a greater good should have some sort of personal stamp of approval, so to speak, on it. I think that we have been talking, as Tony said, a lot about this kind of grander ideas of how about things, our observations of what the status quo is in the world, and what our thoughts of how things could change for the betterment of society. I believe, and I kind of challenged Tony to come up um, with his definition of what the greater good is, because we do want to kind of move towards that. I believe that everybody should start with the greater good, and then we can kind of figure out what our purpose in life is, and we can kind of work towards developing systems and habits towards enacting steps that will bring us toward that greater good. But it doesn't have to be universal. I think I disagree with you in this situation, where I think that all of humanity and all society, I think people are innately good. I don't think that there's like somebody who's born that's just kind of malicious or evil. I think there are malicious and evil people out there, but I don't think that they're born that way. I mean, give your thoughts on that, because I see you scoffing. But
I, I don't think that. I think like you just kind of hit the nail on the head that everyone is born, with a good heart, with a good intention, and you're in this world, and that's like deep down, everybody strives for that desire to grow themselves, a desire to push themselves forward, and is innately good at heart. Um, I think the difference is that people get discouraged young at age, and that they kind of put that like a seal on their heart maybe, and they just choose bad over good. They choose, they find out, like, all right, either they're labeled bad, or they find out that being bad is can get them their quick reward, so to speak, and that they just decide like that's what how they're gonna live their life, is they're just gonna choose the bad over the good, or over the neutral, so to speak. Um, but I do agree that what you said is that most people have that in them, and I think that once you tap into that, even the worst of the worst can still bring about a greater good. If you have that power to do bad, you also have that power to do really good.
yeah, a lot of the greatest influencers of our time have gone through a lot of adversity and struggled, and kind of come out better for it, I think, or maybe stronger for it. But yeah, I think that, I think that you're right. People shape their perceptions of themselves and where they fit in the world from a very early age, from what they've been told and from what they've experienced. And some of them either choose to believe that they're bad, actually believe that they're bad, or just see that by being bad, they get a better reaction from the world, and so they shut themselves out from that. But I think that there is no original sin. I think that we are born kind of innocent blank sheets, and we are molded by how we're raised and by where our situation is. No, everybody's unique. We're all kind of like snowflakes in that situation where nobody's ever experienced the same circumstances in the same time at the same place as you have. So all those little kind of choices and dilemmas and lessons and experiences that you have received have shaped you to be unique. But I believe that no matter how bad a person is, you can kind of win them over with patience and empathy and understanding. But we'll get into that a little bit later. I think we're getting ahead of ourselves, right?
Yeah, you're right. You're right.
I think we can go back to what our definition of the greater good is. Personally, so the reason I started this is because I think that everybody can have their own unique definition. It doesn't have to fit into what I think is the greater good or what you think is the greater good to be part of a greater good. Does that make sense?
Yeah, well, remember when you just mentioned like how you challenged me, like define what the greater good is, and I just basically like came back and was like, I can't tell you because I know you already know, and you kind of need to look within yourself and figure out what that is. If I put a definition out there, and either one, you don't agree with it, so you're not gonna like, you're gonna think maybe different about it. I told you already know what the greater good is. So look inside, find what it is, and then you'll kind of discover what that is.
Yeah, so this is the first episode. This is where we have to start. And I think that everybody needs to kind of shave away whatever is bothering them or whatever outside distractions they have or whatever doubts they have about themselves, whatever's holding them back, whether they feel like they're lazy or they're not worth it, or maybe that they're not lucky enough or they're born in the wrong time. People, you need to really dig deep and kind of dive into the soul of it. That begins with what you think should be the ideal world, right? And then we can work towards that. Once you realize what the ideal world is, then you can kind of discover your purpose. Once you have your purpose, that's your why, that's your center, and then you have something that's solid that you can kind of build anything from, right? So that's what we're going to do here today. We're going to shave back everything and figure out, for you and I personally, what's our greater good, and maybe we can give other people actionable steps towards finding out their own greater good so that they can join us on this journey, right?
Yeah.
All right, so I'll get started. It's ironic because I have all these journals and books and things that I kind of have bought. I'm in a situation where I need to change, right? And I've had a lot of habits that are probably not working in my best interests, and so one of the reasons I want to start this channel with you is so that I can better my life. And if anything comes from it, and if I improve, then that's all worth it for me, right? So I found this journal that I wrote, and I started it with a mission statement. And this was a couple years ago, and it said, "My mission statement: I will live each day of my life in a way that transfers positive energy, so that such acts of love, kindness, appreciation, and gratitude can spread and foster a better world for all."
It's pretty powerful.
Yeah, so that kind of boils down to my greater good. And then I've turned to the next page. The next page had my goals. And so my goals were to have at least one positive interaction per day, to take time to appreciate life daily, and to take note of 3 things that I am grateful for every day. And then I kind of wrote some other things. And it's funny, I've gone full circle, but reading that again really kind of hammered home to me what I find important and what I want to see in this world. So what is my greater good? Because I think that for me, one of the things that I have problems with is that I think I got it from Dad, to be honest. I over-rationalize everything. And it's a kind of a defense mechanism. Because when you see somebody being irate and somebody attacking you, or when things are going wrong, instead of internalizing it and feeling it, you can rationalize it and kind of dispel it, right? Does that make sense to you? Do you understand what I'm talking about there? Or should I elaborate?
Yeah, elaborate a little bit on it.
So what I find is like, You know that when I was in university, I went to school for fine arts. I wanted to be an actor, and I took acting schools with Deb in New York City, and she said that like my instrument was dulled. I could perceive uh, people's emotions and actions and around me, but I couldn't kind of emulate those emotions myself. And I think that I live too much in my head to protect my heart. So anytime that I feel something that's like kind of maybe hurtful or passionate or illogical, I kind of try to figure out what's the cause for that and why is that person acting that way, or why am I feeling this way? And I kind of look for a logical, like scientific basis for what would cause a person to do that, or what would cause me to do that. Yeah, exactly. And I need to understand everything kind of step by step, break things down to their base forms, and that kind of takes passion outside of it a little bit, and it kind of, I don't get riled up about anything. Does that make sense? So I think that it's like a blessing and a curse. It's a blessing that I am able to kind of take a step back and not let passion override reason. But sometimes passion is important. To have drive, to have desire, you need to tap into that passion. It's not logical, right? So for me, this was a challenge to find the greater good that would instill passion for me to want to go. So bear with me, okay? Because I need to break things down so that my brain couldn't trick myself to not believing what is the greater good.
Yeah, that's why I kind of threw it back on you initially. It was like, you need to figure this one out. Look inside yourself and determine what is the greater good. I know like that's what I said. And you'll figure it out, but I don't want to define it for you. I want you to be able to kind of do some introspection and figure that one out. It's crazy, man. That a lot of, you were tapping on it before, like how you view things and how you perceive things kind of shapes who you are and what you essentially become, and how you write your story. One of the greatest quotes that I heard that kind of like hits the nail on the head and it makes you really think about it. It was from Albert Einstein when he said that there's only two ways to look at the world. One is that everything is. I'm paraphrasing kind of here. It's like one of them is like everything's bad, and the world's a bad place, or the other is that everything's a miracle, and the world is a good place. It does make you think, and it's like when you decide, like, all right, I'm grateful for my life. I believe everything is, happening for my good and for my betterment. You start to see a lot differently than, if you're paying attention to the news and what people are gossiping about on Facebook and social media and like other things where it's just like that world seems like it's a very negative world, and it's like every time you turn on the news or the radio, it's like some guy got murdered today or someone was stolen, a house was robbed. And you're like, well, that can't be the whole world, that just like, why is the focus so much on these things? And it's like, those headlines, those are what captivates people's attention, which in itself is strange, like I remember having a discussion with one of my friends, like, where's the news station that just shows the good stories out there? Like this guy got miraculously healed from cancer because some great guy gave him the body part that he needed. Like, it's like that guy is the innate good, the greater good, and those are the stories. Like I think maybe eventually or down the line we can start a news channel like that. That would be something that would, I think, would be an interesting experiment to kind of put out there. But
the world needs to be ready for that, right? To answer your
prepare.
question, your rhetorical question, I guess. I mean, like people like the sensational news stories because I think we use social media and news media as a gauge to measure where we fit in the world, right? And so if
Yeah.
we see that all these horrible things are happening in the world, then we're not so bad off, right? But if we see all these wonderful things in the world, then maybe our life's not so great, right? So, um, but I'm not saying that. Like I think that if we see enough or consume enough tragedy and disaster, then we start to believe that that's reality, and that's the downside of this, right? So we're seeing this disaster, and we're thinking that this is commonplace. Just because we desire to see it doesn't mean that we should be consuming it as much as we do, right?
Yeah.
I wrote down halfway through my search for the greater good, right? Like I do all this. I engage in a lot of self-destructive behaviors, right? I kind of maybe, I don't know if I subconsciously don't think myself worth it or whatever. I kind of said so. Why am I so susceptible to self-destructive mechanisms? How do others have the energy, desire, drive to live bountiful lives and make a positive change? What is a positive change and why should it matter? The point of life is to survive. So why am I killing myself? To feel alive. That's what I'm kind of saying. To feel something. I think that we kind of engage in these not so helpful behaviors, I'll just call them, because we want to feel something. Maybe we're just going through the emotions, and by doing that, we actually kind of pierce in, right? And this is where I kind of get into my over rationalization of things, that I kind of I perceive all emotions as illogical and unnecessary, right? That biologically we have a couple base needs, and that's all we have: to eat, to breathe, to sleep, right? And that's all you are. But if the point of life is to survive long enough to pass on one's genes and continue the assured survival of our species for future generations, as like quote Darwinism, survival of the fittest, then we want. It's hard for me to rationalize that desire anymore because we're everywhere. The survival of our species is not a threat right now, right? We're kind of, if anything, we're pervasive. But it seems like we might kind of almost be that our species is at risk because we're so pervasive that we're actually starting to kind of decimate our natural resources and our planet and where we're at, right? So I think that we do need to do something. Otherwise, the survival of our species is at risk. Does that make sense?
Yeah. It's I went to it wasn't a conference, but it was when I was working for a prior company. We were trying to look on how to advance our company from where it was at, and one of the things that at this meeting they gave a chart, and it had all these different like list of different emotions, right? And there was like a temperature gauge next to it. It was like happiness, joy, excitement, and it was going down. As it got to like the bottom was like depressed, sad, angry, and then there was like a neutral area where it was like basically okay, like your mood. It was like a chart, and the guy asked, like, he's like, circle what you think the temperature of the world is. I think I remember circling like just like okay, like somewhere in the middle type. And it ended up being, he said that like 80% of the world is running on anger right now. And I was like,
Anger.
that's like anger. Anger was the key. Yeah, he's like, because like anger comes from hurt, like, so a lot of people are hurting,
Right.
and hurt turns inward into depression or outward into anger.
That's
And
true.
the people that turn it inward, it's hard to deal with her inward. Especially if you don't have any tools to go to, you turn to what you think might work, and that's usually, drugs or abuse or some type of not so great destructive, as I would call it, behavior.
Yeah, to null the pain or to dull the pain.
I like to dull the pain, and then it can also, like you said, form outward, which is like you're just lashing out at everybody, and you're just living in that angered state, and it's, if you ever, like, when you're angry, if you ever stop and like sense when you're angry, it's like you actually can feel it. Like you feel your body's tight, you feel like your mind is rushing. You're like, it's imagine being in that state for a majority of the time. Like it's you can't.
It's like
Nothing productive is coming from that.
Yeah.
So it's like you're trying to escape that feeling, and you want to some way somehow, alcohol, drugs, whatever it is, to try and get that release. But it's only temporary. You just keep in that hamster wheel, and it also puts you more on edge. So it's like something simple where it was like, all right, I don't know, somebody did something, like somebody dropped something, and a simple, a simple accident, and because you're on that ready to pounce, it just gets you so worked up,
Yeah.
And you don't think. It doesn't allow you to be creative in an anger state, for sure.
That's true. Anger is more geared towards destruction rather than creation, right?
Yeah.
So did he kind of make any observations, or maybe did you have any observations as to why that is so pervasive in the society right now? Anger?
Kind of like I don't remember exactly. It was almost 5 years ago now, but it was, a lot of it was, what's that?
No, 5 years ago. So what's it at now, right?
Yeah, exactly. 90%. But we talked a lot about like the influence of media and social media. Like people are watching this negative stuff there, and it's just kind of like building on their story, and a lot of it had to do with the fact that we perceive that life is getting busier and busier and busier because things seem to appear to be happening a lot faster and faster and faster. So it's almost like the busier you are, you define your, like, I'm busier, which means I fit in. It's like it almost, like, people kind of like, it's like a measurement. It's like, I got this, I'm so busy. It's like you don't have time for anything else. People, oh, yes, you're doing good because you're so busy. And it's like, busy doing what though? Like, if it's busyness for the sense of busyness, it's only going to be adding more stress, more anger to your life. So it's a lot of it. It comes from, like, reflecting, and like, do I need to be doing all this? Is this really productive? Am I? Is
Is
there
it
somewhere
part of
where I
the greater
have
good?
more time for myself? Yeah. Is this helping me advance towards the greater good? Yeah. Something. A lot of is what we're going to be discussing is inter-perspective stuff. The stories that we tell ourselves on a daily basis becomes the lives we live. And one thing, I haven't done it yet, but one thing I just heard recently was the power of writing out a time journal. Like a whole week, take a whole week. Everyone's got the same amount of hours in a week and, you know, kind of write out where all your hours fall. And she says that, like, I forget the lady's name, but she said that, you know, we'll link to it down below here. But yeah, she said, you know, once you map it out, most people have like 50 hours, you know, that they fill their time with watching TV, which is, again, you know, you're getting that story of negativity flowing to you, even if it's, you know, a lot of it's maybe you're watching something else, but you're not being productive if you're watching TV. You're not really doing anything for yourself. So you're not growing. You're actually, the latest research says you by like 4 hours a day or whatever the exact number is, you actually shrink your brain by too much screen time. You know, I can link to that below too. But yeah, that's what I'm saying. Your brain is actually shrinking. Now, when you think about it, like on the flip side, if you're taking that time to reflect and, you know, grow yourself and put yourself in that creative state, your mind grows when you're in a creative state. You know, so I think it all kind of starts from is like, all right, let me sit down, let me take a book or journal or whatever I need to pause for a minute and find out where my core is at. And if it's, you know, make a whole list of the person or things that you want in your life and decide, you know, a few steps on that you can take to push yourself in that direction and then start doing them. You know,
Yeah.
We would never have this channel if we were having on the phone, you know, a couple times having good conversations and, you know, deciding like, hey, this is information that probably more people could benefit from hearing. So let's take some steps. Let's figure out what channel, what platform will work for this, and let's write out a list of topics. Let's do something a little bit each day to kind of make momentum towards making it a reality. You know, like you said, even if it's just to you know, you set out to the other quote. Everybody wants to change the world, but few people actually change themselves. You know, so you can't really change the world if you don't decide to change yourself. So it's you know,
one of the quotes that I came in with, like a postscript after I kind of wrote down my thoughts of the greater good, was I mean, it's a common one, but be the change that you want to see in the world. And yeah, I think that, like, what you like you said, any, like, even that's habits. Like, was it Ben Franklin that said, "You are what you do every day," right? So, or that's what kind of what you do becomes your world. And if you want to see a better world, then you need to start with you. The change needs to start with you. So that's why I think it's important for us to start with our own definition of what is the world that we want to see. So what is that change that we want to see in the world, right? And what does that mean to the greater good? And like I said, I was worried about this because obviously I have lots of thoughts on it, and it hasn't been working for me. I don't know, I get lazy or I over rationalize things, as like I was talking about before. So I wanted to make sure that this greater good for me was something solid, logical, that I could kind of say, yeah, this is irrefutable, and this is something I can kind of to build everything on. This is my cornerstone. This is my rock. This is my center, right? And basically, I boiled things down to, I mean, the greater good should and foremost always be to ensure the best for the future generations, so that we can, as a species, not only continue to survive but excel at doing so. Right? I think that biologically we are geared towards just kind of reproduction and passing on our species. So the greater good would be to make the greater future, right? And so, therefore, the greater good lies in shaping the future towards a more righteous, socially aware, and empathetic path by actively modeling traits, behaviors, and mindsets which serve us as useful tools in cutting that path to the youth of today, to the future of tomorrow, right? I think
Nice.
that,
That's a good definition, man.
so therefore, my greater good for me is to be a beacon of light for future generations by sparking a fire in myself of hope, knowledge, and compassion in order that it may spread and burn brightly by those who pick up its torch. Right?
Yeah.
I think that's the way I can do it. Because I was wondering, like, okay, yeah, I have kids, you have kids. Family has always been a big part of our upbringing in our lives. Hence the twin talks right here. But what about people that don't have kids or don't choose to have kids? Should they not be part of this kind of shaping of the future generations? But I think that we can. I think the important thing towards being greater good is developing future generations that to enable them to know that they are capable of change. And the way that we do that is by modeling that change ourselves. And this kind of gets back to being the change that you want to see in the world. Right? It's one thing to actively tell our future generations, this is wrong, this is right, this is what should happen, this is where we want it to go. But we can't expect them to do what we're not doing ourselves. So I think that
Mahatma Gandhi, said he wanted peace, but yet he's like, holding an AK-47. That's not really gonna work. You had to be the peace. You had to become that, and he did make that change, and he was one of the the historic makers, splashers of the time. So. But yeah, you gotta. It has to start with you. It's you. Your world needs to change before anything else can change.
Yeah. I was trying to think and anticipate what some of the viewers and my own personal kind of counter arguments or maybe counter thoughts that might jump in the way, obstructions to this kind of thinking about. Why should I care about the greater good, or how can I make a difference, right? Some people might think that, well, if we're going the evolution route, then let evolution take its rightful course. But I think the problem with that is that it worked biologically in the past, but evolution takes a long time, and it happens over many, many years in a short period. But what we have done with technology and the rapid change that we're enacting on the world right now cannot wait for biological evolution to take place. We need to kind of actively change, otherwise we're going to lead to our own destruction. So waiting for natural selection is not going to work anymore, in my opinion. Right? And then another argument could be, well, like, then what can one man, one mind, one lifetime change? It cannot make a big difference. A small fish in a big pond, we cannot change a thing. And so, in a way, you're right. You can't make a very big dent. The action of one man alone will surely not make much of a dent in what's happening now. But you're very wrong, because inaction would be an even greater sin. I think actions come from desire, which comes from understanding, which comes from knowledge. So we have the knowledge. We need to actively educate the future generations about the potential for a bigger, brighter tomorrow through our actions and words, by being open and malleable to learn from them. We are already making a sizable and meaningful contribution towards ensuring necessary change that we need for the survival of not only our human life, but all life on Earth, that we make sure that continues to flourish. Like, I don't know, I was kind of writing stream of consciousness there, but I think that we kind of going back to what we were talking about, the greater good lies in me. For me personally, the greater good lies in the future. So that's in a way a catch-22, because it distances ourselves from what we're doing now, but in a way it enables ourselves for hope, because if we can take the newer generation, who's not set in the ways of the status quo of this generation, which doesn't seem to be putting us on the right path, and we can kind of open up their minds and their eyes to what great potential that we could have, you know, by being a beacon of light towards that, by acting in accordance with what we believe ultimately should be kind of the world that we want to see, right?
Yeah. Yeah, so I think like you said, evolution. I think kind of now we're in like the next phase is like evolution of the mind. You know, there's so much
Yeah.
neuroscience and brain study going on there that like we're just kind of scratching the surface, in my opinion, of like what the brain is actually and the mind itself is actually capable of. You know, so I think that if you know, as part of this kind of growing evolution, like you got to learn how to expand your mind. You got to use it for what it's worth, and know how to advance yourself in the right direction. I go back to like watching TV and playing video games. That's like, that's like the wheel's already been invented kind of deal. Like, not saying that those aren't fun and that they don't, you know, need their place, but you also got to take time to cultivate what's in here. And as far as our yeah, I'm gonna go there. Our education system is horribly inadequate in teaching kids for the future right now. So that is a subject that we will discuss at a later point.
Yeah,
But
that's just what I was gonna say about kind of video games and TV and guilty pleasures. This is something that I've kind of questioned you about before. I think that's a whole nother video. Education is a separate topic. We got tons of topics that we need to talk about, but today, I mean, what about you? What's your greater good?
so kind of like as I mentioned at the beginning of this, is my greater good is, and it's funny because it is, future minded as well, but it's being able to have the greater good for me is when more people have gone from that anger state to either a neutral or, in my opinion, what would be ideal is like a happiness or a joy state, where that's like their daily, like they wake up and it's like, Christmas morning every day, and they don't need gifts under a tree to make them feel that rush of energy. They're just excited to live life, and they have purpose, they have direction, they have a sense of community and belonging. I just think there's a lot of people that feel outcasted, but that's, as I see the greater good world would be a place where more people have that sense of belonging, have that sense of joy that's innately inside of them that they had when they were a child that kind of got squashed along the way somewhere. So my greater good is, in my impact I would like to see, is being able to pave a path, or make a mission to increase that within the masses.
Yeah, man. It's funny because kind of the quote that I kind of mentioned earlier, my definition of greater good about modeling traits, behaviors, and mindset, which serve as useful tools in cutting the path. And then I kind of give an example. Such toolkit could include active listening, exhibiting compassion and tenderness, acting in a clear, direct manner, engendering curiosity and self-confidence in others, respecting all living things' right to life, self-respect, hygiene, self-talk, health and mental and physical health, teaching how to learn and how to keep a sense of wonder in the world, humility, patience, focus, and acceptance. Those are kind of a lot of the tools that I thought that we could share with the youth towards creating this kind of world that we want to see.
By far, and like, it's that's why I go back to the younger you learn these, the better you are, because they just become part of who you are. Once you learn these attributes, then it's not like I think most people give up because they oh, I want to cultivate more compassion in my life, and they go for a week, and it's like something bad happens to them, and they get angry, and then they get bitter, and then they get offended, and then they go back and like, oh, well, I don't need to have compassion for anything. It's like
the actual apathy rather than empathy, right?
So that's what I said. It does not happen overnight. It does not happen in a week. It does not happen sometimes even in a month. But it's staying focused and staying on your why and your sense of like, there's a better life for you. That the life you're living right now is not what you wanted. So what do I want out of my life? If I had to write the story, how would the story end? And that's I think a lot of people are stuck in that, like, I don't know how to begin, or I get through chapter 1 and it's like, yeah, no, I'll go back to the old story. It was a little bit more comfortable. And that kind of goes with what you were saying and what I was just saying about the mind evolution, is that the primitive mind wants to keep you there. The amygdala, I believe, is the focus on there, where it's like survival. Survival. It's easier for you to survive when you have to exert less energy and mind power to change yourself. Instead, stay in that comfortability, where I know what it is, I know what I like, I'm in my routine day to day. It takes time, but the prenatal cortex, and again, I'm not a neuroscientist, so do your homework on this, guys, is what sparks up here when you start getting creative, when you start expanding your mind, and that is what you got to tap into to kind of find that inner drive, if I will, to keep you going, to push you back, that like to tell the amygdala, shut up. I'm not. There's no need for me to run because there's no tiger in the room. It's just me and my thoughts, and I can control my thoughts.
That flight and fight mechanism that was biologically instilled in us is still here, and it's not been turned off. If anything, it's been kicked into overdrive with all the stresses that we feel, external and internal, from the kind of 9-to-5 workplace society that we have right now. But a lot of what you talked about, and I wrote notes too about kind of how people get started. They know that they want to change. They know they want to better themselves, and they might even start figuring out how to take those steps towards it. And then something happens that derails them. Maybe their own mind gets in the way. Maybe old habits, default behaviors kick in that set them back into the path, the rut that they're in. And it's easier there. It's more comfortable. A lot of that stuff I've kind of written notes on, and I think that we'll make videos about how to anticipate kind of obstacles and how to circumvent them, or how to take them head on. The prefrontal cortex, you kind of actively need to engage that, but you can't be turned on all the time. So we can kind of have discussions about when we should kick that in, when we should be aware and knock it on, and when it's okay to kind of go into autopilots. Maybe we can kind of come up with systems that we can instill to make sure that our autopilot, or our default behaviors, are working towards our better selves and our greater good, right? So for right now, let's kind of wrap this up. Let's talk about how our audience here, what can they do? What's the first steps they can do towards kind of figuring out what the greater good is for themselves, so that they can join us on this journey from the next step about finding purpose and then taking actionable steps to create the greater good. So what would your suggestions be to them? Was there anything that you any questions you kind of wrote down, or anything that you addressed when you were trying to figure out what was the ideal world that you wanted to see?
My one true suggestion, and all my suggestions are true. I don't know why I said that, but my like number one key suggestion, and I think that this is something that can be hard to figure out, and I think once you do, it helps a lot. Is that you need to. This is where I like video games, because they do kind of get you to that point. It's video games, most of them, or at least the ones I played. I haven't played video games in a long time. There was a mission, like Mario. You had to save the princess, right? Like that was the point of the game. Is you go through this all these worlds to save the princess. I know I'm getting long-winded here, but stick with me. So your life, like you only have one life. You're Mario. What's your princess? What is your mission? What is defining it as a purpose, I think throws a little people off. Seeing it as a mission, like what is the ultimate mission in my life? Why do I do what I do? What am I striving for? And figuring out, like, how do I save the princess? Without any cheat codes or anything like that. Getting the right strategies, and picking up the shells at the right time, and hitting jumping on the Goombas' heads, and finding tunnels that lead to more coins and stuff. Like that's part of life, but you have to tie yourself to a mission, or else you'll never make. You'll only get so far, You'll get to like level 3, and you're like, Princess, screw her. Like, she's better off than Bowser, Like, so I think writing out, maybe you don't know, but write it out. Maybe write out what is important to you right now. What is at the core right now? Write it out and keep doing that until you find some clarity on your mission. Writing is more powerful than we like to admit. Like, everyone's on their text devices now, and they're, but writing things down has power.
Yeah, this kind of really, I agree with you. I like that. I had a bit of trepidation going into this mission, so to speak, about defining the greater good, because I always, whenever I try to think of the path that I want to put my life on, I get this big mental fog, and I can't figure anything out, and I just give up. I'll figure it out another time, and then that's my default. That's how I live my life, and that's, I think, why I fall so easily into such traps and self-destructive behaviors. So I was a bit nervous about this challenge, so to speak, the first challenge, and writing it out really helped. I kind of started from a sense of self-deprecation and really down on myself, like, how can I find this out? And I kind of started a dialogue in my writing, and it helped me really to kind of to develop the ideas and come up with something concrete. So yeah, I think that's a great piece of advice. Write it out. I also think that what's your princess? That's a pretty good way to start. I think that we're going to get to purpose. I think purpose is a little bit separate from greater good. I think you can't define your purpose until you understand what you think the greater good is. What's the ideal world that you want to see? So that's what we're going to do today. That's your mission, viewers. You're welcome to join us.
Your homework. We always give each other homework.
Yeah. Our homework was to develop the greater good for ourselves. Our next homework is to create an actionable purpose of how we can contribute to the greater good. It's very similar, but you can't do it until you know what the greater good is, right? You could be a fish, but if there's no sea, then you're lost. So what really helped me with, and I guess it's similar to your princess theory, is once I kind of whittled out through my writing what the greater good was, I attached it to an image. because oftentimes we have this definition and it can be long-winded, and it's hard to whittle down and make it simplistic enough in words for us to understand. But if we can attach it to something like an image, we can pull that up instantly. So for me, the greater good was being a beacon of light for the future generations, acting in accordance to what I want to see in the world, because I believe that the greatest hope lies in our future, right? And so now, whenever I think about what the greater good is, I see an image of my youngest son, and he's 10 months old now, but you know, the smile of purity and stuff like that. So I don't even need to think of that definition that I wrote down before, because I can see his image, and that immediately recalls to me my mission, what the greater good is for me. That if you can attach it to some sort of visual image or representation or feeling or smell or color, something that can instantly bring you to that sense, then that will really help too.
Yeah, the more you can connect the body with the mind, the better off you'll be. Yes, maybe that's probably another discussion too as well. But all right, well, yeah. I mean, so there you have it. That's what we're about. That's our mission. That's why we're here for right now.
What's our next mission then?
Our next mission is to continue this mission.
I think so. I think by extension we should go into purpose, but maybe we can also kind of write down our ideas of what obstacles might jump in the way. What deters people to get when they first get started or from getting started, and we can kind of help people get over those hurdles or anticipate them.
All right. Oh, I'm writing it down. Overcoming obstacles. All right. Cool. All right. Good. So that will be the next topic that we discuss here. You know the deal at this point. Subscribe, like, comment. I would love you to comment, because I want to know what you think, and I want to know if you have anything, other suggestions that you can put forth that will help us expand what we're doing. All right, guys. Well, until next time, same black hair, same two twins. Thank you for coming. Your host for this
Keep it happening.
Good night.
Night, bro.